Last time, I told you how the police came to my door, how my neighbor's whispers turned into open judgment, how my own son looked me in the eyes and said once again, "You're not my mother anymore." I thought humiliation before the whole town was the worst pain I could endure. But I was wrong. That was only the surface. What came next cut deeper than shame. It brought fear. Real fear. Because soon, my son's choices would not only break my heart, they would put us both in danger. After the police visit, I lived in constant tension, as if every knock at the door could shatter what little peace remained. My son grew bolder. He stayed out later, disappeared for days, and when he returned, his eyes carried a wildness I didn't recognize. His laughter was no longer the sound of joy. It was sharp, reckless, and frightening. One evening, I woke to the sound of voices in the house. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. But then I heard laughter, rough and unfamiliar. My heart pounded as I slipped from bed and crept into the hallway. The living room light was on. There were 4 boys sitting there, their shoes muddy on my rug, their jackets thrown carelessly over the chairs. My son sat among them, leaning back, a bottle in his hand. Smoke hung in the air, thick and heavy. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice trembling. All heads turned to me. One of the boys smirked, another laughed. My son only glared. "Go back to bed," he muttered, his tone sharp, dismissive. "This is my home," I said, though my voice shook. "You can't bring them here in the middle of the night." One of the boys leaned forward, his eyes mocking. "Looks like your mom doesn't like company." The others laughed, and my son, he laughed too. That sound pierced me deeper than any insult. I stood frozen, ashamed, humiliated, afraid. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to speak. "Please, leave, all of you. This isn't right." My son slammed the bottle down on the table, the sound sharp and violent. "I told you to go back to bed," he shouted, his voice filled with fury. The boys fell silent for a moment, their eyes darting between us. Then, slowly, they rose, muttering under their breath. One of them shoved past me on the way out, his shoulder knocking against mine. I stumbled, catching myself on the wall. When they were gone, the house fell into silence again. My son glared at me one last time before storming into his room and slamming the door. I stood there in the empty living room, the smell of smoke lingering, the chairs still warm where they had sat. My whole body trembled. This was no longer just rebellion. This was danger. He was bringing strangers into my home, people who could hurt him, or me. The next morning, I tried to talk to him again. I told him what had happened frightened me, that I couldn't live like this. His face was blank, his tone icy. "Then leave," he said simply. "Leave." My own son was telling me to abandon the home I had built, the home I had fought to keep after his father died. I stared at him, tears burning my eyes. "This is our home," I whispered. "Yours and mine. I will not leave you." He only shrugged and walked away. From that day, I began living in fear. Every time he left the house, I wondered what he would bring back with him. Every time I heard footsteps outside, I prayed it wasn't another group of boys. I slept lightly, waking at every sound, my body tense, my mind never at rest. And then, one night, the fear became real. Because it wasn't just boys he brought into our home anymore. It was something darker. Something that made me realize just how far gone he truly was. If you thought a son could only wound his mother with words and defiance, you are wrong. What he did next showed me that even a mother's love has limits, and that sometimes love cannot save. It was late, past midnight, when I heard the door slam open. The sound jolted me awake. At first I thought it was just him, returning as always, but then I heard voices, low, rough, not his. My heart froze. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold against the floor. The hallway was dark, but I could see light spilling from the kitchen. As I crept closer, I heard laughter, cruel, sharp, not the laughter of children, but of men. My hands shook as I pushed the door open. There were 3 strangers sitting at my table. Not boys this time. Men. Their faces were hard, their eyes sharp. One had tattoos snaking up his arm, another smelled strongly of alcohol. My son stood among them, trying to look confident, but I could see the nervous twitch of his hands. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice shaking. One of the men turned to me, grinning without warmth. "Evening, Mum." "Don't worry, we're just here for a drink." I looked at my son, my eyes pleading. "Who are they?" He didn't answer. He only glared at me, as if daring me to say another word. The man with tattoos leaned forward. "Your boy owes us," he said casually, as if it were nothing. "We're just collecting." My stomach dropped. "Owes them? For what?" My son shifted uncomfortably, his jaw clenched. "It's fine," he muttered. "Don't start." "Don't start?" My voice cracked. "You brought them into our home. What have you done?" One of the men chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Relax, lady. He just borrowed a little. Nothing serious. But you know how it goes. Debts have to be paid." I felt the room spinning. My son, my only child, was tangled up with men like these. Men who spoke of debts and collecting as though it were their trade. I wanted to scream, to drag him out of that room, but my legs wouldn't move. "Please," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. "Leave us alone. He's just a boy." The man with tattoos smirked. Boys grow up fast when they have to. My son finally snapped. "Enough," he shouted. "Get out." For a moment, the room went silent. Then the men laughed, slowly, deliberately. One of them stood, towering over my son. "Careful, kid. Don't forget who you're talking to." Fear surged through me. I stepped between them, my body trembling. "Please, just leave. Whatever he owes, I'll find a way to pay it back. Just don't come here again." The men exchanged glances, their smiles fading into something colder. "You better," one of them said finally. Then they left, their footsteps heavy, their laughter echoing down the street. The moment the door closed, I collapsed into the chair, my chest heaving. I looked at my son, my tears spilling freely. "What have you done?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He only turned away, his face pale, his hands shaking. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window until dawn, my body numb, my mind racing. I realized that I was no longer just fighting to save my son's soul. I was fighting to keep us both alive. The next day, I tried to speak with him again. I begged him to leave those men behind, to let me help him, to let us start over somehow. He shook his head. "It's too late," he muttered. "You don't understand. They don't let go. Too late." Those words rang in my ears, louder than any scream. From that moment, every knock on the door, every shadow on the street, filled me with dread. I jumped at every sound, certain those men would return. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. My life became fear, and my home, once a place of warmth, had turned into a prison. But the worst moment was still to come. Because soon, I wouldn't just be fearing their return. I would be begging for mercy inside my own home. If you thought this story couldn't grow darker, wait until you hear what happened when they came back. Because that was the night I learned how far a mother can be pushed before she breaks. It was a stormy night when they returned. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder rolled through the sky, and I sat alone in the living room, clutching my rosary in trembling hands. My son hadn't come home yet, and every minute that passed twisted my stomach tighter. Then came the knock, heavy, relentless, not the kind of knock a neighbor makes. My blood ran cold. I froze, praying it wasn't who I feared. But when I opened the door, they were there, the same 3 men from before. Their clothes wet from the rain, their expressions darker than the storm outside. "Evening," one of them said, his tone mocking. "We told you we'd be back." I tried to steady my voice. "Please, please, don't do this. He's just a boy." The tattooed one pushed past me, forcing his way into the house. The others followed, dripping water onto the floor. My heart pounded so loudly I could hardly hear my own thoughts. "Where is he?" one demanded. "He's not home," I whispered. "Please leave. You have no right." "Right?" the man sneered. "Your boy owes us. If he's not here to pay, maybe you will." My knees nearly gave way beneath me. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling. "I don't have anything," I begged. "I'll find a way, I promise. Just don't hurt him. Don't hurt me." The men laughed, cruel and sharp. One leaned close, his breath sour. "You better figure it out fast, lady. Next time, we won't be so polite." Just then, the door slammed open. My son stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain, his chest rising and falling as he looked at the scene before him. His eyes flicked to me, then to the men, and for the first time, I saw panic on his face. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered. One of them laughed. "And you shouldn't make promises you can't keep." The tattooed man grabbed my son by the collar, pulling him close. "You think you can play games with us, boy? You think you can run?" "Stop!" I cried, rushing forward, grabbing at the man's arm. He shoved me aside so hard I stumbled into the wall. The breath knocked from my lungs. Pain shot through my shoulder, but I didn't care. My eyes were on my son, who now stood frozen, trapped in the grip of men far stronger than him. "You're coming with us," the man hissed. "No," I screamed, my voice raw. "You can't take him." But my son, he didn't fight. He didn't even resist. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I thought I saw regret, sorrow even. But then he looked away. He let them drag him out the door into the storm. I fell to my knees, sobbing, my hands reaching out into the empty air where he had stood. The rain pounded louder, drowning out my cries. My baby, my only child, was gone, taken by men who saw him not as a boy, but as property, as debt. Hours passed before I found the strength to move. I sat by the window all night, staring into the storm, waiting for him to return. He never did. The next morning, I went to the police, begging them to help. But they shook their heads. "We can't act without evidence," they told me. "Boys like him, they make their own choices." Their words were daggers. Boys like him. Choices. As if my son had not been led into darkness. As if he hadn't been swallowed whole by forces stronger than any child could resist. I walked home with empty hands and a heavier heart than ever before. My neighbors stared as I passed. Some pitied me, others judged me, but none understood the weight I carried. Days turned into weeks. Sometimes he came back, stumbling in at dawn, his eyes vacant, his body bruised. Each time, I tried to hold him, to comfort him, but he pushed me away. "Don't," he whispered once. "Don't look at me like that." But how could I not? How could a mother not see the broken boy inside the man he was trying to become? And then came the night I feared most, the night he didn't come back at all. The silence in the house was unbearable. I sat awake, listening, waiting, praying. But the door never opened. The sun rose, and still, no sign of him. I knew in my heart that something had changed, something I could never undo. If you think you've heard the worst, wait until you hear the end. Because the final part of my story is not just about losing my son, it's about living with what came after. I never saw my son walk through that door again. The night he didn't return stretched into days, then weeks. At first, I told myself he was just hiding, that he'd come back when he calmed down, when he realized no one could love him like I did. Every sound outside made me jump. Every knock at the door made my heart leap with hope. But it was never him. Instead, it was silence. Silence so deep it pressed against my chest until I could barely breathe. I searched everywhere. I asked the police again and again, but they only shook their heads. "He's not missing," they said. "He's just not coming home." As if that were any less of a tragedy. As if my pain was nothing. The neighbors stopped whispering and began avoiding me altogether. In their eyes, I was no longer just the mother of a troubled boy. I was the mother who had lost him completely. Their pity weighed on me like chains. I wanted to scream at them, Do you think I didn't try? Do you think I didn't give him everything I had? But my voice was gone. Nights became the hardest. I sat by the window, the lamp burning low, staring at the street. I imagined him turning the corner, his face tired, his body broken, but finally coming home. I imagined running to him, holding him, telling him none of it mattered anymore, that he was still mine, that he would always be mine. But he never came. Instead, the memories came, his little hands clutching mine on his first day of school, his laughter echoing through the house when his father swung him high into the air, the way he used to crawl into my bed during storms, whispering, "Don't let go, Mama." And then, the other memories, the slap, the words, the cold stares. "You're not my mother anymore." Those words haunted me louder than the silence, replaying over and over until they became the rhythm of my grief. One afternoon, I found his old toy car under the couch. The paint chipped, the wheels loose. He had carried it everywhere as a child, even to bed. I held it in my hands and wept until my body ached. That little car was all I had left of the boy I once knew. The truth I didn't want to face was this: my son had chosen a path I could not follow. He had been swallowed by darkness, and all my love, all my prayers, could not pull him back. I had not only lost him as a son, I had lost myself as a mother, but I am still here, and maybe that's the cruelest part. To survive, while the person you loved most in the world is gone, not dead, but gone in every way that matters. To walk through this house alone, haunted not by ghosts but by absence. If you are listening now, if you still hear my voice, I beg you, don't turn away from the ones you love. Don't think you have endless chances, because one day the door might close for the last time, and you'll be left with only memories and silence. I have shared my pain with you, not to seek pity, but to remind you how fragile love can be, how easily it can be broken, and how deeply it wounds when it is thrown away. Now, I want to ask you, what would you have done? Could you have been stronger than me? Could you have saved him when I could not? Tell me in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from, and what this story makes you feel. Because I need to know I am not alone. And if my story reached your heart, if you carried even a fragment of my pain for these few minutes, then stay with me. Share your thoughts, share your own stories. Because sometimes the only way to survive the unbearable is to be heard.